Hey folks, this is Kalani. I'm going to be looking at the Mad King's Labyrinth and the good old Mad Realm. Basically talking about what this can be used for, whether it's worth farming, what it can be used to farm for, and all that good stuff. So, the first thing to talk about would be the amount of mobs, the amount of creatures that spawn inside the Labyrinth. And it's actually quite lackluster compared to what we got in the Queen's Jubilee in the Pavilion. The Pavilion was downright insane for the amount of mobs that spawned. The other thing is that there isn't a great deal of veterans here, and there's no champions whatsoever. In fact, the only things which are worthwhile to actually kill for loot, kind of in and themselves, is the legendary bosses. They will drop you a champion bag, which is a special candy bag, which is essentially just a champion bag. It's got all the loot there. I'm assuming it has the exact same loot tables. I'm not entirely sure if there'll be any exotics tied to it, but you do get a few pieces of candy corn along the way as well. So, maybe worth it in the long run, depending on what you want to do with your candy corn. Potentially. Probably not worth it compared to normal champion farm. As I say, I don't know what kind of things you could expect from the exotics. Any exotics, rares will definitely be there, but obviously exotics seem to be specific to champion loot bags. So I'm not entirely sure if there are any exotics in there. But what I can say is that every single mob in the Labyrinth, while there may not be as many as the Pavilion, there is a great deal of them, don't get me wrong, but I do know that every single one can drop the Halloween items. That is the Nugget Center, the Plastic Fangs, and the Skulls. So you can actually get those, and what's interesting is that you can get the fully refined versions, which are 1,000 of each respectively. I'm not entirely sure if you can get the candy corn cops. I haven't seen one of those, but I know that I have found one of Tyria's best Nugget Centers from a mob randomly in here. Now, that in itself is pretty awesome, because those are basically what you'd want to be farming the Labyrinth for. You want those materials to either go into the crafting or to sell. We have a quick look-see on the trading post while this boss is going down. We search for Nugget. You can see that Nugget Centers are over 9 gold. Sorry, the best Nugget Centers, I should probably differentiate. But they're actually at 9 gold. They're over 9 gold. So having that drop for me, that was just instant 9 gold in my pocket, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But obviously that's going to be incredibly rare to get the fully refined version, but it is possible. At the side of that, you've got all the little bits and pieces which can add up as well. I mean, getting that Nugget Center is the same as 1,000 of the smaller ones dropping, which can happen. They do drop, so it may potentially be worth it in that respect, especially if you want to try and save some money on some of the crafting items. But I don't think, gold-wise, I don't think that'd be a decent way to spend your time. I definitely think if you want to min-max the amount of gold you're going to get per time spent, you're still better off farming champions. But as I say, if you want those materials, this is probably the best place to do it, because you get your trick-or-treat bags at the same time. So, how are we looking with the farming, and essentially where are you going to get your materials, your drops from? So there's 3 different types of events which can spawn from the Mad King doors. If we have a quick look-see, we've got another door present in the south of the map, and we've got one up here. Now this is the first type, which are the legendary bosses, which can hurt quite badly. But you've got the legendary bosses. Now there are 3 of them: the Grand High Viscount of Candy Corn, the Labyrinthine Horror, as well as the Undying Lich. Now some are easier than others, which is kind of annoying. The High Viscount definitely takes the longest to kill, especially if folk don't understand that they should be standing on the candy puddles. They do help, guys. They help a considerable amount, excuse me. So, actually seems like everyone's dying here. That's not ideal. But, as I was saying, that's the first type. The second type just spawns a single veteran, obviously kind of the worst deal you can get. There's the Labyrinthine Horror. Fun times all around! But you can get a single veteran, which obviously isn't great for loot. But the third type is actually the best one for loot, which will continuously spawn mobs, and I believe they seem, or at least they seem to scale, because when you have a Zerg, there's a sick amount of mobs which spawn from those. So if you get those events all the time and don't get any veteran events, you could actually make a lot of money with this, specifically, or rather, especially, if you get some decent drops. Obviously, farming is all about the drops. If you don't get drops, you don't get money. So, I mean, just the sheer amount of mobs which do spawn from those large mob events kind of makes up for the amount of mobs which you don't get elsewhere. Now, that's all I can really talk about with loot. The Halloween items specifically are what really drives this and makes it worthwhile, if it is worthwhile. But apart from that, you also got the experience factor. So if people remember, back in Crown Pavilion, it was not uncommon to see people power leveling their characters through the Crown Pavilion. With all their boosters on, you could get to 80 in a few hours of grinding. Obviously, probably the most tedious way to level, but very effective indeed. So how does that work out for the Labyrinth? Not too great, I have to say. Let's get ourselves onto a candy patch. It's good experience. Now, it's kind of a different form of experience because you didn't really have any events in the Crown Pavilion. You had the legendary mobs, which were the events, and then you had the odd event, which people may or may not have completed due to how many can really be bothered to go outside of the Zerg. Because staying in the Zerg was definitely the highest, or rather the most efficient way of gaining experience. So everybody kind of wanted to be a part of that, and grinding the mobs endlessly instead of going out for a few mobs on the side was kind of better. So we don't have as many mobs as the Crown Pavilion. That means we don't have as much raw experience from tagging mobs. However, we do have a great deal more events. We have up to, you can see, we just completed one event on top of another event, and another event spawned right next to it. Now, if you can find everything which is a part of it, then you can actually get credit for everything. So that's another gold event, which at level 80 is 18,000 experience. Works out at about, I think it's half a bar or 3/4 of a bar, and obviously that scales depending on your level. So every event giving you half to 3/4 of a bar, this is without boosters, is kind of cool, especially if you get the really fast events. Now, couple that with an event where you can spawn a ridiculous amount of monsters, and you're looking at a lot of experience. But, as I say, it's not as fast as Crown Pavilion was, but it is still, if you want to farm your way to 80 on an ult, it's viable. It's probably not the most fun thing in the world, but it's definitely viable, especially with things like Guardian Staff. That's ridiculous. You can tag everything just by running and auto-attacking, but I don't know. I'll let you guys decide on that. If you can handle the boredom and you have the boosters available, it's a nice way to level, but remember, whenever you power level a character like this, you're not going to have waypoints. And I'll let you in on a little personal story. I don't play my Mesmer specifically because she doesn't have waypoints. I can't be bothered running around the world getting all the waypoints. I can only go to Citadel of Flame, that's the only dungeon she has unlocked. So it's kind of But as you can see, we've got ourselves some of the, or rather, one of the, actually we should have two. Yeah, 2 large candy bags. These are the champion bags. Open them up, they always contain candy corn and the usual loot table. We've got ourselves some chattering skulls. I don't think we got anything else though. And we can have a hunt for the rest of these events. Now around the corner, we've got one of the veteran events, one of the king-sized candy corn elementals has spawned, so we'll get a few taps on that. You can see my experience bar is filling up quite nicely, so that side of it isn't actually too bad. But as I say, this fully depends on what you want to get from it. Interestingly enough, I don't think any of the veterans which spawn for an event drop any loot, which is kind of stupid. Kind of really stupid. Kind of really annoying at the same time. I mean, they might have a chance to, and I don't know, for a veteran and for it to be an event monster, for it not to be dropping loot, and I don't think I've got loot off any of the veteran event monsters, it's kind of lame. Really annoys me when mobs just flat out don't drop loot. I killed something, GIF, like at least a grey. But heading down to the other events, hopefully we'll get one of the monster events so I can show you that. If we don't get immobilized, the most annoying monster in here has got to be the mummies. They grab you, they immobilize you, and just flat out annoying. I'm gonna open this other door just to see what we get. Foes remaining. Hopefully people will gather up and destroy this one, or at least drag the skeletal lich over. Oh, that's kind of not ideal. The problem about pulling this at the same time is that the skeletal lich sort of AoEs everyone. It's probably not ideal, but never mind. We've got stuff to farm. So you can see a load of mobs, really a ridiculous amount. Some of which are veterans, so some of them do take quite a few hits to kill, which is always nice if you're a little slow. Maybe you don't have the best AoE. But a good amount of monsters. One thing that's really cool in here, and I guess I should mention it, is the amount of bones that drop. Obviously, with skeletons being skeletons, I guess ArenaNet sort of realised, hey, these should probably drop bones. You know, they're sort of bones. So you can see a large amount of bones are dropping, and this includes ancient as well. If you're on a character which is obviously eligible for the ancient to drop, I think that's kind of like 72 and over, something around that mark. And we can happily go back to killing the skeletal lich before it kills us. Now, there's two things wrong about me splitting off. First is that the skeletal lich is quite difficult to kill, especially if there's not enough damage going onto it. So when people split, there's less damage going onto it and it heals for more than it's being damaged, meaning it's practically unkillable. And that people who stayed and attacked the lich wouldn't have got any loot for what I opened. But just to show you guys, hopefully they'll forgive me. But apart from that, there's kind of nothing else I can say. Is it worth farming? If you want the Halloween items, yes. If you want straight up gold, probably not. Is it a decent place to level? Yeah, if you can do with the boredom. I personally would rather run around the world. It gets you waypoints, it gets you exploration XP. You get to kind of skip all the vistas, but I don't know, it's a change of scenery more than anything else when you're out in the world. But if you want to grind, if you want to farm, then it's not a bad place. It's not a bad place. I definitely love the theme of it. I really, really enjoy the theme. I love Halloween as a holiday, as a theme, just in anything, but they really did this well. I really enjoy the themes here. It's so gloomy and dark, it's brilliant. But apart from that, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys to make decisions. Let me know how you like the zone, specifically, down in the comments. Do you think it's worth farming? Have you got anything nice out of it? Let me know in the comment section below. Talk to me. Alright, but apart from that, thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.